Leave your ego at the door and get ready to be raw. This is Strength to Overcome, where real men find their strength in weakness. All right, guys, welcome to the Strength to Overcome podcast. I'm your co host, Ryan, with my man Matt here. And Matt, we've reconnected after a number of years, and I'm pumped to be on here with you, brother.
Ryan, it's amazing that it's been this long for someone that I value, so highly. It's kind of sad, and I kind of want to dig in on a little bit of that, and obviously, just let you know that I've thought about you a lot during those 12, 13 years. So I apologize for the times where I probably, could have reached out, wanted to reach out, but didn't. So we're gonna unpack some of that here today and moving forward.
Yeah, it's
I'd
been,
love to.
like you said, 12, 13 years. Probably haven't seen each other since I think 2012, 2013 range. So, just to give folks a background a little bit, you were my trainer at one point, a mentor at one point, still a mentor, but we trained together, and you were one of the ones that inspired my fitness journey, and was kind of a role model for me getting started in the eventually getting started in the fitness space. So um, really appreciative to reconnect and get back with you here.
Yeah, and I can't wait to hear the story because I actually don't know it. And the timeline of me leaving that area and you doing that obviously has quite a few hours in there of dialogue to unpack. So very excited to hear it, and that's going to be something we're going to be moving forward with in future episodes.
Yeah,
So
man.
congratulations on it, and I want to hear more about how you went from where you were at the time to what you ended up doing.
Yeah, man. So it's been a while, but like I said, pumped to be back with you and catch me up a little bit where you are now and what's going on in your world.
Well, that's a really great question, and I think that the last 18 months of my life will probably snapshot that answer pretty well. I never liked Facebook, so this is some good irony here. But I 18 months ago decided to do a 90-day challenge of my own myself, right? A post a day for 90 days, with the intent of sharing, connecting. Obviously, I'd been gone from Australia for a long time. So I wanted to, reconnect and share. This is where I am. This is what's happening. And so I got, 90 days of posts. I shared some stuff about my mum, my dad, my brothers and sisters, my childhood, uh, put up some stuff about my wife and kids. And a lot of people didn't know me in those roles. And so it was a really kind of cool experience. As I got towards the end of that 90 days, I realized that I was going to take it in a direction um, of something that I'd been battling with for about 10 years, a project that had been sort of given to me, but I'd never really unpacked it. And so I got to that 90th day and that last post and actually put up three pictures. I put up a picture of me and my powers, physically, and then another picture of me and my lowest point. But there was another picture. It was just the logo. And it was the logo of Strength to Overcome. And there was a caption there that, I went down the process of sort of explaining, hey, listen, the backstory to this is, a little difficult. It's got a lot to unpack and it's going to take a bit of time, so be patient with me. Well, thank you for everybody for being so patient. It's something that I walked away from completely because I didn't know how to share it or why to even share it. And so fast forwarding to now, it's come full circle. And so, at the close of that 90 days, I had every intention of going down this path, but life got busy. We had been in some financial trouble, around that time. And so my wife, went out and said, well, I'm going to start working. And she went from being a stay-at-home mum to accidentally getting two jobs and working 7 days a week. And it just happened so fast that I ended up being a stay-at-home dad, trying to do some side jobs on the side, and that wasn't enough to cover our debt, let alone our expenses. And so I said, well, I'll start Ubering. So I started Ubering and getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning and going about that as my contribution to the household. And so we were two ships in the night, and our marriage was already in trouble at that point. And I'd be up for different hours than she was, and she'd be late home, and so we would be eating dinner at 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night, after her night shifts. And so this went on for a handful of months, and it really took a toll on us. It was long days for her, long days for me. It was a real kick in the teeth from where we had been financially. We had been in a really incredible place, of financial freedom. And so we had this real shift in our household. Nothing seemed to be working. Definitely a really tough time. So I really started to think about going back to training after having walked away for a few years and just been that stay-at-home dad. And I got really, really close to getting back into the training field and putting on that jacket, that crunch at the time, that crunch jacket of comfort that I knew and was good at. And I had to make a decision, and I chose not to go back. And at the time of choosing not to go back, there was an immediate shift in what was happening in my life. I started to get carpentry jobs out of nowhere. I started to get some real traction on, handyman work and painting jobs, and it just kind of exploded on me to the point where we started to have a real conflict with our schedules because she was working so many days a week, and I, had this work coming at me that was paying really good money, and I couldn't take it all. So I'd take the kids with me on these jobs and take snacks and pillows and iPads and, the jobs that I could, they'd sit there and they'd be there for the whole day, just being little troopers, they're 3 and, well, at the time, uh, 2 and 4, right? And, just really tough. Tools in the back of the sports van and baby seats and just chaos. But, my wife couldn't take them with her and I could take them with me. So I spent the summer of last year just plowing through as many jobs as I could, taking them where I could and, getting help when I couldn't take them with me from, her parents, and even went down the babysitting route and nannying and things like that. So it's just a real timeline of chaos. But we were treading water, and then I started to get into some self-help books and some motivational stuff and things of that nature, but I'd always done, but just got away from. And so one day I had while I was Ubering, I'd taken this chap to the airport, and in this 45-minute ride, it was 5 in the morning, it was pitch black, and I'd taken this chap to the airport, and it was just the most powerful 45-minute drive I'd ever had. We were sharing things, and he was just opening my world to a whole new concept of creating your own path and prayer and meditation and your expectancy and such. And so at the end of that ride, we had swapped numbers, which I'm sure you're not allowed to do, but I did it anyway. And we said, hey, listen, when you get back, he was going out of the country for months on end, and so I said, listen, when you get back, I want to reconnect. Well, I forgot all about that, but later on in the summer, I got this call from him and said, "Hey, can I get you to come pick me up? I'm coming back." I said, "Man, I am so busy with work. I'm committed. I, I got the kids. It's just too much. There's just no way." And so I said no. And about an hour later, I just had this feeling to change my plans, and so I did. And I got someone to cover for the kids. I went and picked this guy up, and we picked right back up where we left off. And I was picking him up as a friend this time. And so we spent that 45-minute drive home, and about 5 minutes from the house, he said, "Hey, can you peel into the bank here? I got to get some cash." So we did that. We got to his house. I jumped out, helped him unload his suitcases, and we shook hands, and he put some money in my hand as he did that, and jumped in the van and took off. And as I opened my hand, I was shocked because he'd given me $300, and I'd done rides for $40. for that same ride. And, at the time, it kind of moved me so powerfully. I'm like, this guy's dialed in, right? Yeah, I mean, that's insane. It's a lot of money and the conversation and just, everything that he had to tell me and inspire me with. And I was just moved. And so I pulled myself in to a lot of that type of content and, really, really dug in on that. And it was a real time of challenge for me. And the reason it was a time of challenge for me is because my whole life I had battled with lust and finding myself as an Australian with an Aussie accent, in a foreign land, I stand out. It's easy to have a lot of attention, and I'd always battled with that in my life. But my marriage had been struggling for so long, and our love languages had just been completely abandoned to the point where, you can justify self gratification through lust. And that had been a real challenge for me my whole life. And so as I'm digging in on this content, I'm finding that my life is at a real crossroad. There was not enough bandwidth, not enough energy for me to create the future that I wanted for my personal journey, for my marriage, for my house, for my children. There was just not enough room with this lust being such a powerful distraction in my life, and spending time looking at images and getting caught up in that. It's so easy on social media to find things to look at, and just found myself wasting so much time. But I was also pouring a lot of time into creating a bright, healthy, abundant, loving future. And so I was at war in this period of time where eventually my work became so overwhelmingly busy that my wife and I had to sit down and say, right, you're going to cut back your hours. Well, when she cut back her hours, it meant that she was going to sacrifice health insurance. Well, of course, that was a decision that we had to make because obviously that was a bit of a safety net for us, but it was also very expensive out of her paycheck. And I was losing money by not working that extra time that she would have to qualify. So we made this really big decision in January, and so she cut back, and I took on all the work that was coming at me full throttle and just went nuts. And things started to look good. I was digging in on my material. I was, making really good money, and started to pay back some of the debt, let alone pay our bills. We were starting to actually catch up a little bit, but my marriage was still suffering, and it was because I was in this prison cell of lust that just had a hold on me for decades. And so I continued to work hard on everything that I could, and I was putting more time. I was getting up earlier and going for these 3 mile walks in the morning at 4 or 5 in the morning, and just, leaving my cell phone behind and just pouring myself into prayer and meditation and manifestation and just creating a future in my mind. And so it became this war within me, this battle that I was wrestling with, because when you're in a marriage that's suffering and you feel abandoned and you're not having your needs met, you justify what you're doing, right? You justify falling back into self gratification and taking care of that, thinking, well, it's natural, and I'm a man with testosterone, I've got needs, and, this is how, I'm going to do it. And so it just became this crux of war that I was in. You're not worthy to have anything other than being a carpenter. You're never going to be able to help anybody if you can't overcome anything yourself. You're going to fail. You're going to lose another marriage. You're going to lose your kids. This wall. And I was so busy with work that when you're tired and you're mentally fatigued, you just keep falling. And so there'd be days where I'd be on fire, days where I'd stumble. And then one day I was working on a job, which, again, 30 years of doing this stuff. I'm a one man band. I've always done things on my own, and I was working on this job, and I got everything done. I'd been there for weeks. I got everything done to the last task. It was 5 o'clock. My wife was waiting. She goes out dancing on Thursdays, and she had said, "Hey, will you be home in time for me to get going?" And, thumbs up type stuff. Just got one last thing to do. Everything was ready. Been there about 2, 3 weeks. Last task on a Thursday night, and I went to do this task. And as I'm doing this task, I'm visually looking at my arm, and I watch my bicep tear off the bone. And I felt it, and I heard it. And at that moment, I had this voice. It was my right arm, and I had this voice. Here, I didn't hear anything, but this voice said, "This is your last chance." And I said one word. I said, "Understood." I had to call my wife and tell her, "Hey, I've torn my bicep. You'll have to come get me," type thing. Uh, I didn't tell her any of that story, of course. Most of this story is going to be heard by her for the first time. But I saw the surgeon the next day. He took one look at it and said, "Cancel the MRI, you need to have surgery." He scheduled me on Monday by clearing his own schedule. He doesn't work on Mondays, but he cleared his schedule to do surgery. He, drilled a hole through the bone, reattached the tendon, put me in a soft splint cast for 2 weeks. I went back after 2 weeks. They cut that off, and they put me in a far less comfortable brace and said, "You'll be in there for 8 weeks." So you can imagine someone that has been physically active as a carpenter for 30 years and as a trainer for 20. You can imagine that this is it's a real kick in the teeth. And there's a part of me that says, you did it to yourself. Because for the first time, I have felt all of my energy shift. There is no room for anything else. There is nothing but a goal now of rebuilding myself into a completely new man. A lot of people out there know me as someone that has changed their life. You said you were one of them, but it's been done behind a veil of my own battles and mistakes that I've made in my marriage, my prior marriage, and I'm going to share that journey with you. I'm going to share that journey with those that want to hear it. I'm going to share that journey with those that are struggling through a lot of things because right now I'm in financial ruins. My marriage is on the brink, has been for years, but it's really being tested now. And of course, physically, I'm back to start again and just hope that I can, you know, get back to the active Matt that I am. But I'm driven more now than ever. I'm focused. There's no sharing of that energy. That energy that I am is not split between my goals, my dreams, my hopes, my passions, my expectancy for abundance, my loving, caring, affectionate marriage that I know I can have, that I have caused personally a wall to be up. And physically I need to rebuild. So thank you for letting me share that with you. And I'm excited more than ever to do that.
Yeah, man, that's powerful stuff. I can hear it in your voice, and I didn't know that whole story until till now either. So that's pretty powerful. And you and I were just talking on the through text, a few weeks ago. We were planning to get together right before the accident happened, and it's almost like somebody had other plans, that kind of shifted us in a different direction because I think we were going to get together. I was going to come down. We're both in Florida now, and I was going to come down, and we were going to just smack it around the golf course like old times. And I don't, that would have been fun, but I don't know if it would have the same thing would have come from it as that's come from that now, because out of that singular accident, with your arm, your bicep, we're now speaking to, hundreds of people, possibly thousands, hopefully millions down the road, and sharing our journey and our struggles, and hopefully that's going to lead to helping somebody else out there.
That's the plan. I've had a vision of this for 10 years, and we're going to go back in time and look at why that didn't happen 10 years ago. Um, but before we dig into the origin series, I'd like to hear about what's been happening with you, and kind of what brought you to the position that you're the right man to be on the other side of this journey for me. So walk me through a little bit on what's been happening with you.
Yeah, I think there's a reason that you came up with this strength to overcome vision, this idea, and it's not two TO, it's two as in the number two, right? So
That's right.
it's it's almost like it's meant to be with the two of us here, and I can relate to a lot of the pain that you're feeling, just because I've struggled I'll say my whole adult life with depression, and riding the highs and lows, the roller coasters up and down. Probably I was that way as a kid as well. It just wasn't really diagnosed or looked at, but there were probably some underlying things there from the past. But I've since ever since I was 19 years old, I've been on antidepressant medication. I can probably list you more medications than you could ever think of that I've been on. It's like a dictionary at this point of medication, and it's kind of
Wow.
sad because over the years it's almost like some things work, some things don't, some things work for a while, then they stop working. And at this point, if I was 19 when I started, I think I started taking Prozac at age 19. And at this point, it's almost like I have to have some sort of cocktail of medication to work correctly. And currently I'm on a kind of an atypical SSRI type of medication and and antipsychotic medication combined. So this is the type of medication they give folks with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, but it's used in my case to kind of interact with the SSRI and have a greater effect. And that's something that not a lot of people know about me, is that I'm on fairly strong medication to handle my day-to-day life. And my whole life I've been an achiever. I call myself an achiever. And I think a lot of those achievements and those things that people know me as, whether it's a high school basketball player, a college golfer, a PGA professional, a fitness trainer, a coach. a gym owner, um, soon to be father now. We've got a baby coming in July. But a lot of those things that those achievements that I've racked up over the years have been kind of a coping mechanism to deal with a lot of the pain of the pain I feel on a day-to-day basis. So when when I see someone and hear someone like you struggling at this point, I can relate to it. I can put myself in their shoes. And I think that's partly one of the reasons that you and I both went into the fitness space is to help people that are hurting and struggling. You know, sometimes it looks like, yeah, they've got to lose some weight and yeah, they want to put on muscle mass, or they want to fit into this dress, or they want to get their triglycerides down for the doctor. But I think there's a lot of underlying emotional pain and struggle there that you and I have helped people with in the past. And it's eye opening. I know it's going to be eye opening for a lot of folks out there listening, that both you and I have struggled and kind of been on the pain, call it the pain train, ourselves, even though we're the ones in position to try to be helping others.
Yeah, I mean that's so happening to me. You know, I knew you pretty well back in the time, and that's news to me. But it doesn't change anything I think of you because the lens I look through now is completely different, and it's been that way for a while. But I look at your story, and obviously we're not together now in the same space. But I'd be like high fiving you for sharing that and coming out with your battle on that because I think as leaders in fitness, people just expect us to have everything else taken care of,
Yeah.
and that hasn't always been the case. So thank you for sharing that portion of your battle.
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
been
something that kind of works on you as you come up to being a father again and not again, but in addition to rather, how does that feel?
well, it's that feeling of, not having it all together and struggling on a day-to-day basis just to exist, just to be, just to function. And then now the thought is out there and the reality is coming that I've got to take care of, and I'm responsible for another human being. And I think there's a lot of fathers out there, a lot of men out there that are in a similar boat or will be at some point. And I'm getting ready to go through it myself. And it's tough, but it's also an amazing, you know, thing that my wife and I are about to embark on. And I'm excited to share it with the folks out there and kind of share my struggles. Like you and I have talked about, there's no real prep for it. There's nothing, no help out there. So we're going in blind, and I'm going to learn on the fly, and like I think a lot of fathers do. But it's uh, it's definitely a challenging time for me, just because like I said, I've got that underlying past with the depression. We've uprooted our whole lives over the last year, moving away from Roanoke and down to Florida. We're here for at least 3 years with Erica's medical residency at the Mayo Clinic. And for me, I gave up my career. Essentially, I sold my gym up in Roanoke, gave that up to be able to move down here and really support her dream and her vision. And so it was an interesting thing for someone like me, as such an achiever, like I call myself, to give that up. And now I'm on a track where it's looking like I'm going to be a stay-at-home dad, and that's tough for me to find a purpose in. And Do I think it'll happen? Yes, because I think it's going to be amazing. But for someone who's labeled themselves as an entrepreneur or as a business owner, a coach, a trainer, former golf pro, to now have none of those things to fall back on to identify myself as, it's going to be Ryan, the father, and that's gonna change things dramatically. Physically, I'm not where you are in terms of your injury, but, folks out there will notice I've got a big scar on my neck here, if you're watching the video. But, and really, I didn't tell anybody about this, partly because it was almost like a falling from the top type of situation where I had become so injured and so debilitated by my neck pain, and there's a lot of people out there that know I dealt with some neck and shoulder pain, and back in my gym, I wouldn't press things overhead or do a lot of overhead movements over the last few years. But it had gotten to a point where it was just affecting my day-to-day life, affecting my mood, affecting, my relationship. And I went ahead and last September had neck surgery. So I had two discs replaced in my neck at C5-6 and C6-7. And I didn't really post about it, didn't tell anybody. My family knew, a couple close friends knew, and then my wife was kind of my rock getting me through that period. Um, but now we sit here about, 7, 8 months later, and I'm probably in the worst shape I've been in what, 10 years since about the time you and I were getting after it at 180. And then I kind of transitioned into to Gold's and the whole CrossFit revolution there at the Gold's Gym in Roanoke. But at this point, I'm pretty deconditioned. I haven't gained, the weight and things like that. But in terms of muscle mass and aerobic ability and just the volume of training I'm doing, it's nowhere near the amount that it was before. And there's a lot of shame involved in that as someone who came from the top and was a pretty fit individual and led others to become fitter. And now I'm sitting around and I'm doing a lot of sitting at home and a lot of thinking, a lot of watching YouTube and scrolling on Facebook, and things have gotten to a point where, yeah, my neck's okay. I'm able to move around. I don't have I would say the surgery was a success, but there's always that thought in the back of my mind, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do that, I don't want to re-injure myself. And I've kind of I haven't joined a gym down here. I haven't really found a fitness community, and a lot of those things weigh on me as well, as coming from someone who was super fit and athletic and led others to be that way as well. And now I've kind of shriveled in a sense to a point where I know you can relate to, because you're actively battling this injury that's not allowing you to do what you want to do out there.
Yeah, as you were just saying that, I just had that moment of, wow, here we are, really probably shocking. I mean, I over the years, I've tried to count how many sessions I may have trained over the years, and at one point, I think I came up with this number of 40,000 sessions, between my careers, even when I was in a gym back in Australia when I, first started, and we'll get to that at some point. But I think of that number, if I have, if it's 40,000 times I've walked out and said, hey, how's your day going? Hey, Phil. And we all know, especially in the golf community, they say 10,000 hours to be competent at something. Is that right?
Yeah.
So if I've done 40,000 hours, I'd consider myself a training veteran. And obviously, you've got a lot of hours in your resume too.
Yeah.
And yet here we sit, knowing what we need to do, but with our hands tied just a little bit from our own thoughts, our own emotions, our own limitations that we've put on ourselves. And neither of us have a gym membership. So I see real opportunity for both of us. And partly why I wanted to be on this and share this journey is because quite often you'll jump on a podcast or you'll watch a video clip of some guy that's made it all, right? He's got the house, the car, the beautiful wife, the kids, the multi-million-dollar paycheck per talk or performance. And sometimes it's a bridge too far to reach mentally. Like, man, like I can't even move. My hand is so swollen that I can't even make a fist with it. During the last week, I've had a fever for 4 days. My face swells up. It's gone down now, but my face and lips, nasal area, and into my mouth and throat has swollen up so significantly that my wife said, if if it closes over, you just can't breathe. I wake up every day just thankful that I've been woken up at this point because I've always historically had a hard time recovering from anesthesia. I don't take any medications, so I recover naturally, and my body just doesn't like the process. And so, as you share your story about being on the other side of a surgery and recovery, I'm kind of realizing that you and I are teaming up not just for this podcast series, but for the physical side of making a comeback.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a reason we've reconnected and gotten back together. And, you know, a lot of folks know us from different eras of our lives. And so, a lot of people have uh, different realities of how we are or were. And I think this is gonna shock some people that we're two guys sitting here, and we've got some things that are going on in our lives, and we're willing to take people through this journey with us as we overcome, and like the tagline says, finding strength in the weakness that we're experiencing.
Well, 3 weeks ago, I was just excited to get a little bit of debt paid off from some work that I had done. And now here I am at the absolute lowest point, one of my lowest points. I've got some pretty low lows that I'm going to be digging in with you that you don't know. In fact, I'm going to share some stuff that nobody knows, not a soul. And it's going to be a lot of fun to share that stuff. So it's no coincidence in my mind that you're at this point in your life and that I'm here at the same time. And I can't be more excited, to be honest with you, of filming the process of getting up. So much stuff out there is already done, and you're reading about what's already happened and hearing about it, and that's fine. They're good too, and I love them. Um, so I'm excited to be the guys out there that are actually saying, right, we're in it right now. We're with you. We're in that hole together, and would love to be on the journey with other guys out there that resonate and could use some support. Because I know that along my journey, there's been some guys that have really stood up and carried me through this. So,
And I think there's a
uh,
lot out there. There's a lot of guys out there, and it's not necessarily kosher to talk about. It's more accepted to put on a mask and hide the pain and provide and support and put a smile on your face. And there's a lot of people out there hurting that need to hear that there's people going through it with them, and we can grow together and come out the other side together.
yeah, absolutely, brother. I'm pumped to be doing it with you. I can't wait to film the first episode in our Origin series and start digging on some of that and getting it out to people. So we appreciate you guys out there that are listening. Some of you are watching, We look forward to getting to know those that we don't, and obviously reconnecting with some that we've lost track with in the past. So until that time, I'll sign off there and tell you guys to stay strong. You're not alone.
And guys, we'll catch you next Friday for next episode. Take care out there.